and we had to really pick and choose who we could trust with the full information of how we came to this decision and what we did with it, and who we had to really give just the basics. And we had to kind of navigate through that. And we did have one person in our life, a couple of different people who were like, trying to get us to go to counselors. We had, we're like, no, we're clear, we're good, and we did have, kind of a teacher of our children's past who we had shared some of this with, and who really, is deeply in that belief system enough that she, was like, I can't believe you're not letting your kids choose their pronouns, really unsettled.
We're talking about a 4-year-old and a 6-year-old. Does everyone understand that? A 4-year-old. You ever see a 4-year-old? They slobber sometimes. They can't even eat food without getting it all over their face. That's how stupid they are. But they're going to know what gender, 100 genders. You're going to tell them, hey, that's how you make someone gender dysphoric. Gender dysphoric just means you're confused about your gender. How are you going to force that onto someone to make them confused about their gender? I don't know. Maybe tell them that they have no gender until they pick one, and there's hundreds of them, and they have to pick the right one when they're 4. Okay, that all makes sense. That checks out.
By that aspect of it, and so we just had to navigate it. There was nothing else to do, and I think that anchoring for me in, I led my child into this.
Yeah.
It was my responsibility to take him off, was just what held me solid through all of that. And that's what those instincts that I had shut down and those feelings and those emotions, because what I had experiencing, that thing I taught you about, that severing of that relationship, that inversion, I felt that just physically, I felt it emotionally. And so when it came back in to place for me, that's when I realized how much it had been severed. And so nothing was going to stop me from defending it at that point.
And Rose, how are your sons now?
I think they're both doing great. There was a time period where it was much harder. I will say for my younger son, as soon as his older brother was his older brother, he was like, great. I'm good. He had more distress. He was very distressed. Yeah. And I want to tell this story really quickly. We did never social transitioned our younger son like I spoke to, but he showed so much distress over it. It was so ironic that our older son had no distress. We transitioned him. Our younger son had a ton of distress, and we had to, at that point, hold our ground and not do it because we understood what was underneath. And but there were some...
Rose, I'm sorry to interrupt. What was the distress caused by?
This drive to be the same as his older sibling.
Yeah. Conflicting with the fact that he also knew that he was a boy.
No, the fact that we wouldn't let him use she, her pronouns. So even after that moment in the hey, you're my girl, and I love you, and he said, don't call me that.
Right.
He continued to want to be she, her. Always, keep in mind, this was always and practically only in the context of when they would go out and his older brother was she, her, in like a camp setting or the after school program, whatever it was. That's when it was most distressing to him. He was away from us, and he needed to be close to his brother. And he needed that closeness through being the same. And we weren't letting him do it. And so just as an example of that, they went to camp. He was 4, his older brother was 6, and his older brother was with the girls, he was with the boys. He came home so upset, just so distraught. And I kept on going back to, we're not changing this, He looked at me, he's 4 years old, and he said, Mama, when I hear he, it means shit.
Keep in mind, this is a 4-year-old, and he already knows that society hates, straight male men. You know what I mean? He already knows that at 4 years old. What are these people doing to these kids, man? They don't know their genders because they're telling them they ain't got no gender until they figure it out at 4. What is wrong with these people?
And this is another thing we could do a whole nother 5 podcasts on what we are doing to these little boys. The biggest piece of advice that I would give is that it is not transphobic to question. It is not transphobic to question whether or not essentially telling your child that they can change sex is in their best interest. It's not transphobic to not feel good about this, what you're doing or what you're being told to do, to feel uncomfortable with it. And it's a place where I just really encourage people, if you have doubts, to listen to them. And what was important to me to hold my ground through this whole thing, and what we had to navigate with other people who wanted us to keep our child in that sacred status. Some people did not want to hear that it wasn't working, and that it was going to change. You have to picture your child at 20 years old, 30 years old, 40-year-old, 50-year-old. What is their life going to look like then? And those experts, those friends, those neighbors, whoever they are who are telling you what to do, are not going to be there for your child. You are. And I think some people I've talked about this, seen it as a highway. Some people have talked about this as a train. If you are affirming your child currently, you have put your child on that train. Your child is on a train, and it has one destination.
Yeah. Puberty blockers.
And I just say, I did it. You can do it. You need to have the courage to grab your child's hand and jump off. And there may be distress, there may be anger, there may be tears at the impact, but just be patient, stay calm, and over time, healing will come.
Yeah, they might call you names. God forbid that you might care about your child more than a bunch of strangers calling you a name, a transphobe or racist or whatever. God forbid that you care about your child more than total strangers calling you a name. This country makes me sick, man. Humanity makes me sick.
I would say, it's an ongoing process of reflection for me. I absolutely, I have people who are identify as trans in my life, and who I love, who are adults. And I think just like I'm speaking to for my own process, that there's going to be a complex set of factors that go into that identification for adults. I no longer believe that this is something that is innate, that is born in people. And so that whole piece, was important for me to come to. But I do believe that for many people, this identification feels like a core part of themselves. And I do think that a lot of that is likely coming from this belief system, and it's not that, that there are adults in my life who feel good with having gone the medical route, or who feel good about being in the non-binary, space. But what I no longer believe is that this is something that should be evangelized and institutional and pushed on children, this concept of gender identity. I no longer believe in that as something, and I do find it to be quite dangerous in so many ways.
And does it worry you that particularly in the States this is being...
It's like raising your kid to be gay. Maybe 10%, 5% of the population is going to be gay, and then these people. It's like if you took them to like if God came down and took them to Vegas and said, "Look, here's some dice. You can roll on. You can roll these, and if you get any number, your kid will succeed, except if you get 1 and 1 snake eyes. And so and if you win, your child is successful, and if you get snake eyes, you don't, whatever. It's like they're picking they're going for the longest odds. You know what I mean? And God says, do you want the snake eyes to be the winner or the loser, or do you want every other combination to be the winner or loser? You know what I mean? They're like, oh, I want the snake eyes. I want that to be where they win, and every other combination they lose. And anyone else would be normal and go the other way, but not these people. They just gamble on 1 in a million when they have 999,999 other ways over here that are more probable, but they're not going to raise their child that way. That's crazy.
Being used more and more in schools, particularly in primary schools.
For sure. Yes.
Yeah, that's why you don't raise your kid gay, because he's probably not. So why would you do that? Just like this trans thing, 1 out of a million kids is trans, and you're like, well, I got to raise them trans just in case. I got to, 1 in a million kids have cancer, so now I have to tell my kids about all cancer all day long, tell them how they're going to get cancer probably, how they're going to die from cancer. Their life has to all revolve around cancer, so they're prepared just in case they get cancer, just in case.
Younger son is in 2nd grade, and in their small school, they have 2 non-binary staff assistants, and one of them is in my son's 2nd grade class, and his teacher, again, best intention, she wants to make sure that this adult is included and respected by the children, and because of that, she started off the school year saying, if you change your name, the rule for this class is that you have to respect the new name. And so some kids the first day changed their names.
They all probably did. See, this is a mental problem with this non-binary thing. And these people, if you have a mental problem, you should not be teaching children at a public school.
It wasn't along gender, it was just kind of random.
Who wouldn't change their name?
But there is this, yes, I am.
I'd be like, yeah, I'm stoned from now on. Call me fire. Come on. What kid wouldn't change his name?
I'm deeply concerned that the children are being told that it's a matter of respect to do. It's
like Pokemon cards, but they're gender cards.
The core point,
pick what you want, kid.
Out of everything you
Change
said
them,
today is
trade them.
The fundamental idea that children should lead is the most insane thing that anyone has ever come up with in relation to parenting. Is it not? I mean, they literally. I had my son is 8 months old, and I think I see him growing. He's getting smarter. He's not going to know what gender or sex is or what identity is at 3 years old.
Yeah,
he's not qualified to make that decision. His lived experience is mainly pooing in his pants and drinking milk. That's all he does, right? My point is, the very notion that children should lead is insane. It's insane. And how we've got to this place that so many people believe it is terrifying, which is why...
What's funny is they're not letting the child lead, actually, because what they're doing is they're forcing the child to believe this thing that they don't know what their gender is when they obviously know what their gender is. Her kid is literally drooling at the age she's talking about, 4 to 6 or whatever. Well, she's in 2nd grade now at this point of the story. But she's done with the gender stuff. In the gender stuff, her kid was 4 and 6. Heck, your kids are literally drooling. What, at the same time you're trying to tell them how there's 100 genders and you got to pick one, and you don't pick the wrong one. Kind
of like, what? I got a little lost there. I want to just say my core belief at this point, when you say how I've changed, it just really rests on the fact that it is impossible to change sex. That if I could just sum up, what do I believe about this now? It is impossible to change sex. Based on that, why are we telling children that they can?